I'm in a field of maize, but I'm not stealing from the farmer, but rather interested in this plant down here. A weed to a farmer, but a nutritious vegetable to a forager. This is scientifically known as Chenopodium album, commonly called things like fat hen or lamb's quarters. You'll find it in the UK in some form from April to October, in places like hedgerows, gardens, waste ground, and most commonly places like where I am now, the edges of farmers' fields, and of course even within cultivated land. And for the record, I do have permission to be here. Fat hen is very closely related to quinoa. Believe it or not, quinoa is scientifically known as Chenopodium quinoa. In other words, it's in the same genus. To identify it, the leaves are this oval to triangular shape. They're kind of wavy around the edges, a little bit serrated as well, you could say. They're this bluey green colour on top and lighter in colour on the bottom. And if you look closely, they can even have this silvery look to them, because on the surface of the leaf, they have these very fine, silvery looking white crystals. You'll notice on the plants that have flowering stems as well, that the leaves tend to be a lot thinner near the top than at the bottom. The flowers appear sometime between June and October, and they're this kind of spiraling structure of very small flowers, kind of whitey green in colour, and eventually they'll form seeds. There are no toxic lookalikes. The only things you could really confuse them for would be other similar things in the same genus, this Chenopodium genus, all of which are edible and all of which are quite similar in taste. You can use the leaves a bit like you would spinach, although it tastes a bit more like cabbage than spinach, but ultimately it's a taste of its own. When the flowering spike forms and the flower buds are unopened, you can actually use that a bit like broccoli. Obviously it's a lot longer and thinner than a broccoli floret, but it can be used in a similar way. The seeds are also edible and they can be used. They are a bit like quinoa, but ideally you want to remove a thin outer layer from them, because that thin outer layer of each seed contains saponins and it can make them quite bitter, and you could say even in significant quantities, even mildly toxic. Fat hen, as I call it, Chenopodium album, is quite nutritious. It does contain lots of vitamins, particularly high in vitamins A, C, and it also has good levels of B vitamins. It's a good source of protein. It's got omega-3 fatty acids. It's good for things like iron and calcium and phosphorus. And I believe before spinach was widely introduced in the UK, it was commonly eaten here. Just a couple of safety notes now. This plant is quite high in oxalic acid, like spinach is to be fair. So if you have conditions like kidney stones where you shouldn't really be eating much oxalic acid, then you don't want to eat this plant. The other thing to be aware of is if you are foraging it from the edges of farmers' fields or even within the crop, A, you should have permission to be there from the farmer, if it's not a public right of way, of course, and B, you should also check with the farmer that the crop hasn't been sprayed with any nasty chemicals. Luckily, I'm actually on the farm that I grew up on, and my brothers run the farm, and so I have been informed by my brother that this has not been sprayed with any nasty chemicals.